Hello, congratulations on making the grand finals. I'm Ali Kate. I'll be one of the judges for this round. With me on panel are.
Hi, I'm Vansh. Congratulations on making the star at the Hi, my name is Abhay. All the best. I'll thank you for
Perfect. Just two things before we start. Kind of respectful to each other. Secondly, please stay POS, hydrated, and with that, first proposition speaker, when you are ready, here we go.
Good morning, everyone. And good evening, everyone. My name is Ayana Agarwal. I'm the first speaker for Team Proposition, and my preferred pronouns are he, him. I prefer POIs if you just raise your hand, and I'll be starting my speech in the backward count of 3, 2, 1, start. Good evening to the House at large and my worthy opponents. Today, me and my teammates are strongly for the motion that this House believes that the country's decisions to go to war should be subject to internal democratic votes within the country. So let's identify the stakeholders first. The stakeholders are the people of the country involved and the government of the country. So the status quo is that this innovative and better strategy is not being used as of now, but could be used to solve wars and conclude them easier and faster. So this brings me to my first point of democracy. A democracy is of the people, by the people, and for the people. If we go on these principles, then all people should get a fair vote and say in such a scenario. Take the country of Israel, for example. All of its citizens are begging and pleading with the government to stop the war, and to just stop it. But the country is not listening, and it's just in vain. So this is a long-term, what my bad. This is the long-term make in the country altogether. Stop believing in the government. That's what's it going to lead to in the long term. So taxes. As we all know, the government gets its money and funding through the people and citizens through their funding of by paying taxes. So the people are literally paying for the funding of wars and etc. Therefore, all the citizens of the country should be able to get a fair say and a vote in influencing what the country does. If this had been done in Israel, then there is a higher probability of peace and the war getting concluded faster and easier. So, and also,
POI.
yes,
Don't you think the people of Israel would be biased against Palestine and would not look at other factors that go into war?
they will, because see, they can see all the what's happening right next to them. One day they might be sitting in their rooms. Next day they see bombs flying onto them or almost killing them. So they will take a lot of factors into consideration. I'll be moving on to my next point now. Yeah. So, and also the people or other affected of the country will know what is happening inside of it. So it gives a clearer and easier solution instead of the government being pressurized by other countries and their sometimes wrong ideas. So everyone, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, our side brings out the real thing, and and the people and the democracy, A- and the and the ground and what is real and relevant at the ground level. It helps us so much making things clearer for the government to do, and it helps us make peace faster and easier too. This is why our side wins. So proud to propose. I thank you with this. I rest my case, but never my stance.
Thank you for a great speech. That first proposition speaker, when you are ready, here we go.
Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good evening to one and all present over here. Today, I, as the first speaker from side opposition, will be coming forth and giving arguments to prove our point. Our burden, our burden is to prove to you that an internal democratic vote should not be taken before a country going to war. We will be proving this by giving you the arguments. The common people should trust their elected representatives. How this could lead to rushed decisions or could delay the time, how misinformation could lead to irrational decisions, and how the lack of resources could lead to problems. Now, let's start with the first argument. The first point that the proposition might say is that the common man the common man does not believe that the politicians should not be held responsible since they are corrupt and they are greedy and they should not take decisions for the entire country. However, this is not the case. If this would be the case, then the people should not have elected the politicians in the first place. Then they have basically elected their representatives to take decisions for them. Then shouldn't they trust the people? Then shouldn't they trust the politicians that they put their vote in? Isn't this being two-faced? In this era of social media and other platforms in which misinformation spreads like wildfire amongst the common people. Now, what would happen if decisions concerning the fate of an entire country started being made through this misinformation that was spread amongst the common people? How would that country prosper? How would such a country develop and how would that country grow? Now, coming to the next point, even if we were to take the vote of every individual with the correct information, can you imagine how long the decision-making process would take? Now, what would happen if it is a threatened situation or a one... Yes?
So you're saying that there will be a long amount of time that will go into this decision. But so now do you believe that a war that has not been thought of is better than a war that has been thought of?
I believe that decision making for a country should be taken logically but in the correct time. And even if we are thinking logically, if we are taking votes of the people, if we are taking whatever the people are thinking, if that process is going to take a lot of time and the country is in a vulnerable situation, if it is threatened, if it is not safe, it is in danger, then how are we going to take the vote of each and every individual and then make a decision? Now, as I was saying, governing a country requires quick, logical and critical thinking in less time. Now, if we are going to take the opinion of each and every person, this is going to take a long while and the country will be in danger. Now, I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you for a very nice speech. With that second proposition, speaker, when you're ready, you will.
Hello. Okay, so good evening everyone. I'm Sanchit Batra and my preferred pronouns are he, him. I'll be taking my POIs verbally. Just stand up and say POI. That would work. So I'll be starting my speech on the backward count of 3, 2, 1. A very pleasant evening to the one and all present here. I am Sanchit Batra and I'll be presenting my case in proposition of the motion that a country's decision to wage war against another country should be taken by a majority population's vote. Now, I would like to start off by saying that the basis of all democracy is laid by the phrase of the people, for the people and by the people, which is something that my Prime Minister has also told. Now what I would like to say is that opposition wants a world where these democratic rights of the public are snatched from them, whereas we propose a world where democracy is took to another step. What I mean by this is, as my Prime Minister has already told, the funds for the funds for the wars come from the public's taxes, and therefore they as primary stakeholders should have a say in whatever primary decision is taken by the country. That brings me to extending one of the arguments presented by my Prime Minister, that it is the public's taxes and therefore the public should have a say in this. You see, many of the countries of authoritarian regimes have said that, I'll take that POI.
So if you think democracy is of the people, for the people, by the people, and they deserve to vote, but they do remember that they voted for the government as well. So why aren't they trusting the government to make those decisions if they voted for them in the first place?
Okay, so let's see. When it comes to wars are an international issue, which means that the government might just have a tendency to prioritize the country's international image over the public's requirements. What that means is the public might end up agreeing with the government they voted in, let's say point A, but in point B they might just disagree. In that cases, war being a very major decision of the country is something that requires voting. Coming back to my argument, public of countries with authoritarian regimes often say that they envy our democratic rights, and we, instead of being grateful and pushing that one step further, we are here we are here fighting for why we should limit those rights. Moving on to our next argument, I believe that a country's utmost right is that of sovereignty. I believe that and sovereignty is defined as being that a country's internal matters need not be meddled with by some other country. What we want to say here is that we are fighting for the fact that the voting that takes place for this war should be internal, and no other country should have an opinion or say in this, because the country who is physically present in the war knows better as to what is happening, are present in the situation, and other companies might just make the vote as to whether that country should wage war or not, based on factors such as envy or dispute rather than their own good. Moving on to our next argument, you see, governments might often see their country from a very idealistic view, which means that they might have passed a law, but due to multiple layers of corruption on ground, that might not actually be what is happening. If the government is not aware of this or is not aware of what is happening with the minority, they might take a decision that they believe is good for the people, but is actually not. As I mentioned, multiple layers of corruption lead to the condition of ground being different. The public, as actual bearers of the effect of what's happening on ground, know best as to whether the country should participate in war or not, and that is why we support our side. Panel, we propose a world where democracy is held utmost, and we do not move back into a world with authoritarian and autocratic regimes. With that, I rest my case, but not my cause. Thank you.
Thank you for a very nice speech. With that, second option, speaker level 2.
I'm going to start my speech in the reverse countdown of 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. I'm the second speaker of the opposition team, strongly arguing that a country's decision of going to a war should not be subject to an internet democratic vote. So, let's talk what proposition argued. War is not a decision to take easily, so they say that it should be according to people's preference. But we believe that this process may take a lot of time, which causes also led to many other conflicts in the future. Moving to my first argument. National security requires swift and decisive leadership. The decision to go to war is often made in the context of rapidly changing global environment, where national security could be threatened at any moment. In such situation, speed is crucial. A democratic vote could significantly delay the actions. Voting procedure may take time, and the outcome may also not be so fine, so enough to address the immediate threats. This delay can be dangerous, as if any enemy is already mobilizing. The need for quick, decisive action is required, and allowing the time for public votes could make the country vulnerable to attacks. Moreover, in times of wars, military leaders must act quickly based on the real-time intelligence. A public vote would disrupt the speed by requiring significant public engagement and even misinformation. All of this will take critical time away from the national defense efforts. Moving to my second argument, the war decisions by people may lack information. War decisions are too complex to be determined by the general public. Military strategies, intelligence reports, and geopolitical are all critical components of decision-making process. The average citizen does not have access to detailed, often classified intelligence that elected officials and military leaders do. Without the full picture, the public could be sovereign by the simplistic arguments, leading to decision based on partial information. Moreover, war is not about defending borders.
It is about strategic alliances and long-term economic consequences. For example, a public vote could the international law relying on masses for such decision risk, oversimplification or poorly informed choices. Now, the proposition is simply focusing on the points like the public discussion is always the right and the mass decision may have more power, but it may often result in wrong decisions. Like it may also have like many people are voting for the same thing, but don't you think many people can also be wrong as they don't have that much level of education or knowledge about that particular topic? In conclusion, I would like to say that to take such a decision, big decision to go on a war should be taken by the entities that are elected by people as they take quickly decisions and even the right decisions. And if you don't trust the government that you chose, what is the point of electing them if you guys are not even happy with their decisions? Don't you think it will lead to inequality too? Thank you.
Thank you for very fine speech. Talk first, people. Whenever.
I'm Ernie, Government Whip, and as the Government Whip, I'll be giving you a summary of the arguments that our side of the House presents today, and rebuttaling the cases that side opposition today presents to us. I start on a self count of 3, 2, 1. Panel side opposition believes in a minority over majority mindset. What do I mean by this? I mean that panel side proposition today understands that a government in a democracy is chosen by the people. But even in a democracy, it is never justified or ethical for one entity to make decisions for the whole country, especially when it comes to war. As a country, as a war affects everyone in a country, and it is totally unethical to let one entity choose for the whole country panel. Side proposition today understands that in a democracy, a government is elected by the majority and the people should have trust in their government. But panel understand that if person A supports person B for some particular thing, that doesn't decide that person A will also support person B for something else as well. Panel understand that there are many decisions to be taken in the country and everyone, every citizen needs to have a say, especially when it comes to war. Panel democracy is again of the people, for the people and by the people, and it is totally unethical for the decisions to be taken only by the government. Panel, on our side of the house today, we give to you a very large Lok Sabha. We give to you a world in which countries are actually democratic, not just democratic till the elections get over. Panel, democracy literally stands for people rule. And if we only offer people's rule till elections, then panel, we create a pre-democratic, post-autocratic government rather than an actual democracy. The public should have a say in whatever happens if it affects the whole country. I would accept that, POI.
Okay, so if you think that only the government is making the decisions, right? Then why are there representatives that the people voted inside the parliament, like from their constituencies? Why are they representing the people?
See, I totally understand that democracy works only when people are elected. But you also need to understand today, I already said this, if person A supports person B for one thing, it does not determine that person A will also support person B for another thing. And today's side opposition, you need to understand that. Now let's move on to some rebuttals that I have. The leader of opposition said, and I rebut, that when a country is threatened, it is already at war. It is now not a public vote, rather an already started war panel. If today a particular country engages in a war with a different country with a vote on side proposition, Then panel, the other country is already at war. It does not have a vote anymore. It is already at war. Now the country needs to be at war. It cannot delay the war just because it needs a public vote, alright? So the country is now already at war, and you cannot say that the country will wait. The country is already fighting with a different country. And lastly, aside the deputy leader of opposition said that and I rebut that delaying the action is better than making a wrong action, right? An action can be delayed if what we get is a right action here. Now, to conclude what our side has previously presented to you, is that number one, a democracy should always work like a democracy, not just be a democracy till the elections end. Number two, it is the public's money that is referred to as tax that goes into such wars, and the public should have a say in where their money is going, panel. Argument number three, sovereignty. The country would know what happens in the country, and it does not need a different country to tell it what to do. And lastly, government would think idealistically, but the public will think realistically. Panel, the public will think for the whole country, for all of the things that are in the war, right? But the government might just only have one perspective to that. With this, I would like to rest my case, but never my stance. Thank you.
Thank you for a great speech. With that, first opposition speakers, and we are ready to go.
I'll be starting my speech in the backward count of 3, 2, 1. Let's start off with clashes. Clash 1. A decision that affects the people. On which side of the house is the people's safety kept in mind? Proposition said that people are safer because they'll be able to make the decision for themselves. But that's only if the majority votes no to war, okay? But what if the citizens say yes to war, even though the government might not have adequate resources, enough military, or even enough defense? The government will be forced to go into war with insufficient preparation, and that affects the people's safety negatively, right? In reality, this would lead to a number of deaths, going into war without preparation. Now see, if this internal vote wasn't there, the government would be able to see whether they have adequate resources, whether they're prepared or not, and isn't that better for the safety or the citizens? To people's fundamental rights. This is what the proposition has to say. They have people's fundamental rights in mind, and they're more democratic because they're keeping all their thoughts in mind as well, and we're not, so we don't do, because we don't do the same. And they give the example of Israel. I personally think this is where the proposition lost the debate by making such a baseless claim. Okay, for what they said is extremely wrong. First of all, you chose the government yourself, and then don't trust them yourselves. How absurd is that, right? People themselves chose the government. They themselves chose the people that are part of the parliament, and they elected those representatives themselves and trusted them with the ability to make decisions for them, right? So how can we not trust them with governing us properly, right? Then might as well not just have a governing body only, right? Okay, now 3. On which side of the house are more informed decisions taken? Proposition believes having internal voting will keep people's interests in mind. But what they fail to see is that they're making inexperienced people vote for something that affects them only. What kind of fate are you putting these people up for, proposition? The government is full of experienced and informed people that you only voted for. They know what they're doing and know the various factors that go into war. Additionally, do you know how biased people can be and the kind of personal stereotypes they can have? You don't know what factors go into why they vote yes or no, right? And is that a safe practice, proposition? People don't know nearly enough about these matters, and you're still making them vote. If I was to vote for the government, I would definitely not vote for the proposition if they were to leave the decision of war up to me and endanger citizens. They said that the government looks at their international image over the people's welfare. First of all, you said that the government themselves are stakeholders, right? Meaning they would also get affected by war. they are also at risk, right? So how are they going to be looking at their international image, which when they are also potentially this close to death or being overthrown? Don't forget, that war is a life and death situation. I'll take your POI.
You said that the people will not have information, but do you not think that it is the government's responsibility to provide people that information? If a war is happening, do you not think that the people should know about what is happening? That the people,
Okay.
hold on, the people should be given the information that they need to.
So that's like saying the entirety of India is literate. Does everybody know how to read? Does everybody know what kind of decisions you're supposed to make when you're voting for a government? What kind of decisions you're supposed to make, like informed decisions that you know the consequences? No, not everybody has that ability. Okay, on which side of the house are timely decisions taken and implementation is better? This is not the case on the proposition side of the house. During times of war, quick decisions need to be taken, and there are a few procedures that need to be put in place. Internal voting will slow the procedures down, and if the internal voting is done in the other country, we're at the brink of war with faster. That puts us at a disadvantage, don't you think? They'll start attacking us, and we'll have no means of defending ourselves because we're still in the process of voting. In conclusion, the stakeholders that are the citizens of the country on our side of the house are better off on our side of the house because they're much better protected for and taken care of, and more informed and timely decisions are taken. However, this is not the case on the opposition. This is not the case on the proposition side of the house because safety is totally ignored. Decisions are made by unexperienced people for the fate of the country, and people's welfare is not looked at. Therefore, opposition takes the win. Thank you.
Thank you for a very fun speech with that opposition reply and we are ready to hear this.
I'll be starting my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. The side proposition already lost the argument when they mentioned that delaying a decision is fine. How is delaying a decision fine? When you are being attacked, when you are simultaneously being attacked, are you going to wait for a decision to be taken? Are you going to wait for each and every person to approve of a decision before taking it? You need to think logically, and that is why politicians, that is why leaders of the country are there. They are elected by the people. You keep saying the phrase by the people, by the people. That is what we are trying to say. The leaders are elected by the people. And who are these leaders? They are people who the common people put their faith in, to whom they gave their important, valuable vote to. So it's their responsibility to take the decision. Now, we talked about the trust that the people need to have in the representatives that they themselves elected, that I already told you about. This method would take extremely long time. This would cause a delayed decision. This would cause the country to be in a vulnerable situation. This would cause danger to the situation. We also talked about misinformation. When the people don't have the correct information, when not everyone has the ability to know about wars. Even if they are given the right information, can they be trusted with the decision? Can they be trusted with the decision? I repeat. Because just having information about anything does not mean that every person can think the same. And every person's decision would be different. So, asking each and every person, asking the vote of every individual would have so many downsides. It would cause more bad things than it would cause it to be better. And now, I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you.
Thank you for a very fun speech with that concludes the day. Government proposition reply will be ready to hear.
Hello. I'll be starting my speech on the backward count of 3, 2, 1. A very good evening once again to the House at large. I'm Sanchit Batra and I'm here to 1. Prove to the House why we win the debate, and 2nd, provide some rebuttals. Starting with the rebuttals, let me tell you something. Did you know that side opposition is actually out of points? That is why they keep repeating the same point over and over again, which means that if the public has elected a leader, then they should trust them. We have rebutted that point again and again and said that if the public has elected a particular person to be in the government, then wars are a scenario where the government might just be more conscious of the country's global image rather than the public's welfare. And that is why in certain scenarios we might be trusting the government to pass laws, but in the case of wars we want our own say. Also, they said that not everyone is educated. Well, side opposition, get your facts right, because in the Lok Sabha or in the Lok Sabha there is no educational qualification. So saying that if the decision is made by the politicians in the Lok Sabha is being made by more educated people, that does not make sense. Also, I want to prove why our side of the house wins the debate today. You see, our house makes the people feel as if they are being heard. We want to make sure that the people's voice get a say in the parliament. While what opposition wants is that if one party has been elected, then they get absolute powers even in matters where the government might want to have a say. They also said that what if the public votes for the war when the country does not have enough resources. Well, if the country does not have enough resources, the public feels that, the public knows that their country is at a lack of resources, and why would someone vote for war? If in this audience I kept a question as to how many of you would want India to wage war with Pakistan, how many of you would support me? Probably none of you. Also, side proposition wants to keep their case and say that we support democracy, and that's why and these are all the arguments that lead us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you again, Rahul, and across the